Hey folks, this is Vince with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to take a quick look at the game Incan Gold. This game is for 3 to 8 players, ages 8 and up, and the average play time is between 20 and 40 minutes. This is a pressure luck kind of game that tasks players with exploring a temple and earning riches. But before I get into that, let's take a quick look at the components and how the game is played. Okay, now as far as the components go, the game is basically broken up into a bunch of different card types and gems. You've got basically a continue and go back to camp card in the upper left-hand corner of the shot here. Players will be using these to decide and to indicate whether or not they want to keep going into the temple or return to camp. You've got some artifact cards here. You've got the temple. You've also got a deck of playing cards, which is made up of riches and dangers. And finally, you have some gems here. The turquoise is worth 1, the obsidian is worth 5, and the gold is worth 10. You've also got these tents here. Basically, these just serve as a player's score pile, so to speak. They'll be opening these up and placing them on the table, and as they earn gems they'll be able to place them inside this tent and keep their final score hidden from other players. Okay, at the very beginning of the game, the temple will be built. What will happen is there are 5 artifact cards, and one will be placed under each of these numbered cards here. This signifies the 5 rounds that the game will consist of. Each player will also receive one of each of these cards. One to signify that they wish to return to camp, and the other one to signify that they want to continue exploring the temple. Okay, now at the beginning of a round, again there are 5 rounds, players will take the artifact card under the next temple card, starting with the 1, and they'll seed that into the deck. I'm just going to just throw that in here. Normally it's just shuffled in. Okay. Now, to start off the round, players will flip over the first card. And again, cards are either hazards or treasures. In this case, you've got a snake here as a hazard card. Now, the first hazard card of that type that is drawn, nothing happens. But if 2 of the same type of hazard is drawn in that round, then any remaining player still in the temple will be forced to run back to their camp and will drop any treasures that they've managed to collect along the way. So again, this is sort of like a pressure luck kind of game. Now at this point, players will pick one of these 2 cards and reveal them at the same time, and as far as whether or not they want to continue exploring the temple or whether or not they want to go back to camp with what they've collected. If they decide to go back to camp, they can bank that and put that into their tent, and they'll be able to keep that treasure, and basically that'll carry over to the next round. So let's just say, for just example's sake, that players will continue. So the next card is drawn. Now in this case you've got an 11 on here, and what happens here is that players will split this equally rounded down. So let's say there are 3 people playing, so 11 divided by 3 rounded down, that's 3 per player. 3 times 3 is 9. So each player would receive 3 of these, and they'd simply put them outside of their tent for right now. Again, you can't bank any until you decide to go back to camp willingly. And the remainder would be put on the card. And again, players would be given the choice to either go back to camp or to continue exploring. Now, if a player decides to voluntarily go back to camp, they get to collect any artifacts or any gems that happen to be up on the table and bank them into their tent. And again, that carries over to the next round. So in this case, this player would earn 5 gems. But he would no longer collect anything should any more players decide to keep going. Now, there are artifact cards in this deck. Again, you seed these at the beginning of every round. And let's say, for example, that this card happens to come up during the course of play. Whenever a player decides to voluntarily go back to camp, like I said, they collect any artifacts or any treasures that are left over. And these artifacts are worth 5 points each. The first 3 are worth 5 points each, that is. the 4th and 5th artifact are worth 10. So whenever you collect an artifact, when you go back to camp, you can either put one of these black obsidian ones worth 5, or these gold treasures worth 10 next to the card to remind players as to how many points that particular artifact is. Okay, just a couple of things worth mentioning. One, whenever 2 hazard cards do come up and players are forced to retreat and drop everything, one of those hazard cards is removed from the deck forever. There are 3 of the same hazard cards in this deck, so just because 1 got removed doesn't mean you won't encounter 2 of those again later on. Another thing worth mentioning, if there is an artifact card that happens to be in that run and 2 hazard cards do come up, force players to run back, it is lost forever and removed from the game. So those are a couple of things to keep in mind if you decide to play this. And that's basically all there is to it. Players will continue taking turns deciding whether or not they want to keep exploring the temple, and they'll be gaining as much treasure as they can, and when they think they've pressed their luck enough, they'll go ahead and run back to camp and bank what they have. The player with the most treasure at the end of 5 rounds will win the game. And there you have it. That's just a very brief look at the game Incan Gold. You can check out my review at www.dadsgamingaddiction.com, or you can simply click on the link in the below description that'll take you there as well. This is Vince, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.